Welcome, everyone. Ready to explore something different this holiday season?
Definitely. Let's talk about Krampus.
Krampus. Not exactly the first thing that comes to mind when I think of holiday cheer.
Yeah, he's from Central and Eastern Alpine folklore.
Okay, so we're talking about folklore.
Yeah. And he's a pretty stark contrast to the jolly old Saint Nick we all know.
Okay, so we've got St. Nicholas rewarding the good kids, but Krampus.
He's the one who deals with the not so good ones.
Right, so instead of just a lump of coal,
Being birch rods, chains, that sort of thing.
wow, starting to see why parents might use his name to encourage good behavior.
Definitely effective.
So how did this creature, who sounds more like something out of a horror movie, become part of the holiday tradition?
That's a great question, and it's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
His origins are a bit of a mystery, shrouded in, well, folklore.
So we don't have like a definitive historical record.
Not exactly. Some think he might be connected to pre-Christian beliefs, possibly figures like the perched and... Yeah, imagine masked figures, kind of both animal and human all at the same time.
Okay, that's definitely got a creepy vibe.
They would take part in these elaborate processions and rituals, maybe an early form of what Krampus represents.
So like the untamed side of nature, kind of like a wild man.
Exactly. And as Christianity spread through the Alps, it's possible those older beliefs kind of got woven in, creating this unique blend of traditions.
That makes sense. You can see that blending in Krampus's appearance too, right?
Absolutely. He's often shown with horns, one human foot, one cloven hoof.
Okay, so that's like straddling the line between human and animal.
Exactly. Civilized and wild, all wrapped up in one terrifying package.
And we can't forget the fangs, the long tongue, the black hair. Definitely not your average Christmas elf.
Not at all. Even his name itself might come from words meaning claw, dead, or rotten.
Wow, that's pretty grim.
He's meant to be unsettling. That's the point.
So he's like the dark side of the holiday coin. St. Nick brings the presents, Krampus brings the punishment. Was this duality always there, or did it develop over time?
Well, Krampus didn't always have such a starring role. It seems his connection to St. Nicholas became stronger around the 17th century.
Interesting. So it's like St. Nicholas needed someone to handle the tougher side of things.
Exactly. Being a saint and all.
So you've got this visual contrast to St. Nicholas, all in his bishop's robes with his golden staff, and then
And then you have Krampus with his chains and his birch rods ready to deliver some discipline.
so how does this all play out during the holidays? Like what actually happens?
Well, December 5th, the eve of St. Nicholas Day, that's when things really get interesting.
Okay, so we're talking about Krampus night.
Exactly. Imagine you're a kid in Austria or Bavaria. You hear a knock at the door.
It could be St. Nicholas with presents.
Or it could be Krampus with chains rattling and those birch rods ready to go.
Oh, I can only imagine the suspense for those kids. Good kids get the treats from St. Nick and the not so good ones.
Let's just say Krampus has some special deliveries for them.
Coal and birch rods, right? And these appearances aren't just limited to houses, are they? What about those Krampus runs I've heard about?
Ah, yes, the Krampus law.
Krampuslauf.
Yeah, I think groups of guys all dressed up as Krampus parading through the streets.
So they're going all out with the costumes.
Oh, yeah, often elaborate handcrafted stuff. They go all out to scare the onlookers.
Sounds a bit like those Persian processions we talked about earlier, right?
You got it. Like these ancient rituals found their way into the holidays, creating this blend of old and new.
Fascinating. But I bet those Krampus runs aren't always, perfectly behaved.
Let's just say things can get a bit rowdy, especially now with the renewed interest in these traditions.
I can imagine. But before we get into that, let's talk about another way Krampus shows up.
You mean the Krampus carton?
Krampus carton. Are those what I think they are?
You bet. Greeting cards featuring Krampus himself. They became popular back in the 19th century.
Greeting cards with Krampus on them.
Yep. And they really show how his image has changed over time. Early on, he was all menacing and grotesque.
Like emphasizing his role as the Punisher.
Exactly. But modern cards.
I'm guessing they're a bit different.
You could say that modern Krampus carton often show him in a more humorous light, even kind of cute sometimes.
Wow, so even Krampus gets a makeover for the modern age.
It seems so. Even he's not immune to changing tastes.
And maybe those changing tastes reflect how we view the darker side of the holidays, or even life itself.
That's a thought-provoking idea.
But before we go there, I gotta ask, are those Krampus carton all family-friendly, or did they get a little mischievous back in the day?
Well, some of those vintage cards push the boundaries a bit. Let's just say they weren't afraid to show Krampus chasing after women.
Oh, so they had a sense of humor back then, even if it was a bit risque.
Definitely. So we've got Krampus visiting homes, running through the streets, and even showing up on greeting cards. But how far does this tradition reach? Is it just an alpine thing, or has he ventured beyond those mountains?
Yeah, is he just a local celebrity or is he going global?
Well, Krampus is mostly known in the Alps, but you can find variations of him in other places like Croatia, the Czech Republic, Hungary, even parts of Italy and Slovenia.
So he got a wider reach than I thought.
He does. And it's interesting how the core idea of Krampus, this dark, mischievous figure, stays the same.
But how he's depicted and celebrated changes from place to place.
Exactly. Take Styria, for example. Families there will display birch rods given by Krampus all year round as a reminder.
Wow. Talk about a conversation starter. Just imagine, guests come over and there's a bunch of birch rods on the mantelpiece.
It's like a subtle hint, be good or else.
Exactly. But I'm curious, what about those more urban areas, the touristy spots? Does Krampus tone it down a bit for the crowds?
You could say that in bigger cities, especially those with Christmas markets, Krampus is often presented in a more family-friendly way.
So less scary beast, more jolly holiday character.
Exactly. It's like he's got a whole PR team working on softening his image.
But even with the toned-down version, Krampus is still gaining popularity worldwide. It seems this figure, once confined to small alpine villages, has captured people's imaginations across the globe.
He certainly has.
But why? Why this fascination with a creature who embodies punishment and mischief, especially during a season often associated with joy and goodwill?
That's a fantastic question, and it leads us to the heart of our exploration. We'll delve into the reasons behind Krampus's enduring appeal in just a moment. Welcome back. Hope you've had a moment to think about this complex figure of Krampus.
Definitely got me thinking about those Krampus cartons, especially those more playful interpretations.
Ah, yes, those vintage cards. They really show how humor changes over time. But beyond the images, there's a deeper question here. Why this fascination with Krampus? Why does it endure?
It's like he's going against this overly sweet image of the holidays.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's saying there's more to the story than just presents and carols.
I think you're onto something there. Krampus reminds us that there's a balance to everything. Light and darkness, good and bad. He's that shadow side, the part we don't always want to admit exists.
It's like he's holding up a mirror, right?
Mm-mm.
Showing us not just our own personal shadows, but also the complexities of society.
Exactly. In a world that often wants everything to be simple, perfect, Krampus comes in and disrupts that.
He forces us to confront the messy, the uncomfortable, the things we usually try to hide, especially during the holidays when everyone's supposed to be so cheerful.
And maybe by confronting those shadows, we actually find a sense of freedom. You know, a recognition that we're not alone in our imperfections.
Like everyone has those darker impulses, those moments where we're not exactly saints.
Exactly. Almost every culture has some kind of cautionary figure, a bogeyman or a trickster who embodies those less than perfect parts of human nature.
So Krampus is just our culture's way of dealing with those anxieties,
Mm.
wrapped up in this package of holiday tradition.
It's possible. And maybe that's why he's so popular now, in a time when everything's about picture-perfect images and impossible expectations.
Krampus brings a dose of reality.
Exactly. And there's something kind of freeing about that, isn't there? We can laugh at his antics, get a little scared. But ultimately, he allows us to say, hey, it's okay if not everything is perfectly jolly all the time.
It's like he's giving us permission to have complex emotions even during the holidays.
You got it. And to not take ourselves too seriously. It's like he's saying, come on, let's have some fun with the darkness. Let's admit it's all a bit absurd.
There's definitely a sense of liberation in that. But there's another layer to this, isn't there? It's not just about rebellion or letting loose. He's also tied to tradition, to cultural heritage.
Absolutely. These Krampus traditions have been passed down for generations, often in small communities. It speaks to that need to connect with our past, with our roots.
Especially in a world that's so globalized, so fast-paced. It's grounding to hold on to those customs, to know they've been celebrated for centuries.
It gives us a sense of belonging, a connection to something larger than ourselves. But it does make you wonder, how do those ancient traditions adapt in our modern world?
We talked about those toned-down Krampus figures in the Christmas markets and the growing popularity of Krampus in North America. Is that a natural evolution, or do we risk losing something essential in the process?
That's the big question, isn't it? How do we preserve tradition while also allowing it to change and adapt? It's a delicate balance.
We want to keep those cultural connections, but we don't want the tradition to become irrelevant. Think about those Krampus cartons. The early ones were often terrifying, but now you have Krampus looking almost cuddly.
It shows how a tradition can change to reflect what's acceptable in different times. And who knows, maybe those cute Krampus images are a way to make him less scary, especially for kids.
Like a gateway Krampus.
Exactly. But beyond the images, there's another relationship that's central to the whole Krampus story, his partnership with St. Nicholas.
That's an interesting one. They're like two sides of the same coin, reward and punishment.
And yet they work together. They complement each other. It's not about good versus evil, it's about recognizing that both forces are necessary.
Like they exist in this delicate balance.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world that likes to put things into neat categories, good or bad, right or wrong. St. Nicholas and Krampus show that those opposing forces are actually connected.
Like you can't have one without the other.
Exactly. It's like the concept of yin and yang, those opposite forces that are actually interconnected.
So St. Nicholas and Krampus represent that duality, that balance that's needed for a meaningful life.
I think so. It's like their partnership, their odd camaraderie highlights this beautifully. Imagine them behind the scenes. St. Nicholas planning his nice list and Krampus suggesting a few extra stops along the way.
Okay, that's a funny image. But seriously, it's not just about good versus bad, it's about the balance between the two. Recognizing that both light and shadow are part of being human.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the whole picture. So we have Krampus challenging our view of the holidays, reminding us about good and bad, and connecting us to our cultural past. But we've only just scratched the surface here.
There's still so much more to explore about this fascinating figure, what he represents psychologically, and how he continues to change in our world.
There is. And those are the things we'll be considering after a short break.
Welcome back to our exploration of Krampus. We've covered a lot of ground, his origins, the traditions, his connection to St. Nicholas, but I keep coming back to this one question: why? Why is this figure stuck around for so long? Why is he so popular, not just in the Alps, but globally?
That's a good question. And I think the answer might be in the unique way Krampus fits into how we think. He's not just a simple bogeyman, just a one-dimensional figure of fear.
Yeah, like he's tapping into something deeper.
Exactly. Think about our world today. It's complicated. The lines between good and bad aren't always clear, but at the same time, we're surrounded by messages about being positive, being perfect, presenting this flawless image.
Yeah, and it gets exhausting.
It does, and that might be where Krampus comes in. He's like a pressure valve, a way to acknowledge that things aren't always perfect, that we all have those shadow sides.
Those moments where we're not exactly saints.
Right. He represents the things we're told to hide. And by doing that, he gives us permission to confront them, to laugh at them, even learn from them.
There's something real about that.
Yeah.
Admitting we're not perfect.
Yeah.
In a world where everything's so filtered and curated.
Absolutely. And let's face it, there's something appealing about a figure who breaks the rules, who challenges authority, who kind of laughs at all the conventions.
Especially those holiday conventions that can feel a bit much.
Exactly. Krampus has this mischievous energy, a kind of playful rebellion that speaks to our inner child.
That part of us that wants a little chaos.
Yes. He's saying, don't take everything so seriously.
And I think that message is especially powerful for young people today. They're growing up with so much pressure to achieve, to fit in.
Absolutely. Krampus with his chains, his birch rods, his whole mischievous vibe. He's like a symbol of nonconformity. He's saying it's okay to be different, to question the expectations.
To not be perfect.
Exactly. He's like the anti-hero of the holidays. But there's another side of this too. Krampus isn't just about letting loose. He's also a reminder of consequences.
Oh, right. Like every action has a reaction.
Yes. With great freedom comes great responsibility. Krampus, those chains and birch rods, they're a very real reminder that our choices matter.
It's a good reminder in a world where we're often shielded from the consequences of our actions.
Exactly. We post something hurtful online. We don't always see the immediate impact. Krampus, in his own way, he brings those consequences to the front.
He reminds us that we can't just escape responsibility.
Right. It's about balance. We can be mischievous, we can challenge the rules, but we have to be aware of what might happen as a result.
So he's not just a figure of fear or rebellion. He's also a figure of wisdom.
I'd say so. It's amazing how a figure that seems so simple on the surface, this scary Christmas demon, can be so complex.
He really does represent a lot. He speaks to our fears, our desires, our need for balance, our connection to our cultural history.
And that's probably why he appeals to people across cultures and religions. He speaks to something universal, something primal and ancient, something about that duality in human nature.
So as we wrap up this exploration of Krampus, I'm left with this sense of awe. He's terrifying, but also captivating. A reminder of the past, a reflection of the present, maybe even a glimpse into the future.
It makes you wonder what new forms he'll take as he becomes even more well-known.
One thing's for sure, though. Krampus is here to stay. He speaks to our deepest fears, our desires for a little mischief in our lives.
Absolutely. So the next time you see Krampus, whether it's on a card, in a parade, or just in your imagination, remember, he's more than just a scary figure. He's a reflection of us, a reminder of how complex life is, and a symbol of how powerful folklore and tradition can be.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Krampus. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the unexpected.